You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Live Tropical Weather Bulletin, not for May 26 at all, that's an old one. Yes, that's wonderful. This is a live Tropical Weather Bulletin showing May 26 when it isn't May 26 at all. That's wonderful. So that's one button that we didn't press in time. How about June 29th? My name's Nathan Foy, by the way, and this is your Tropical Weather Bulletin. We had it all set up, didn't we? This, I promise, is the right one that we've got racked up. You know, we've got to have the fun times every so often. Right now, we have two tropical storms active. Danny, a tropical storm making landfall in South Carolina as we speak, and Tropical Storm Enrique, which is off the western coast of Mexico. Day 180 of the year so far, we've seen 35 storms to the year 2021. This is what the Atlantic looks like right now. We've got two other areas of interest, a 20% and a 30% chance there, although I think some of our team might have something to say about that very shortly. Danny about to move inland over South Carolina. In the Eastern Pacific, Tropical Storm Enrique down to 70 miles per hour, at least provisionally, although it's not looking so hot today. It was much stronger yesterday when it peaked as a high-end Category 1 hurricane. And this is the Western Pacific, no areas of interest right now, very quiet, eerily so. But we can have periods like that at this time of year, so I wouldn't get too worried about that. No areas of interest, and the same can be said for the Indian Ocean and indeed for the rest of the world. This is usually the slide where we show the rest of the world as well if there's something else going on, but nope, nothing today of that variety. And so let's, as soon as this slide finishes up, we'll go on to the satellite imagery. Here's the Atlantic right now. You can see, well, let's take a look there at the top left hand corner. That is, of course, Tropical Storm Danny and its progress over the course of today. And then you've got down towards the bottom right there, another area of interest in the central part of the Atlantic. A tiny little bit of convection. And right towards the bottom right-hand side of the imagery off the southwestern coast of Africa is just a little hint of what's brewing, another area of interest which could develop into a tropical cyclone in about 4 or 5 days' time. Models picking up on that quite heavily actually for the Windward Islands into the southern Caribbean. Gulf of Mexico, oh no, that's changed, so that's showing us an old storm. That's another thing that we've not patched up. That was the Gulf of Mexico slide, but now that is another system. This is the Eastern Pacific right now. Enrique, along the coast of Mexico there, hurricane warnings were in effect for a time. Now the storm is looking not very good on the latest satellite imagery, probably partially exposed on the northern side. Hopefully the other imageries haven't moved around. Western Pacific looks like this. Yep, there it is. There is actually a disturbance there, right in the center of the image there. That has a low chance of development. We've not actually marked it at this point, but that's something that you could keep an eye on. Looking around the rest of the world, that's just showing the Ogasawara Island chain. Nothing to see there. Indian Ocean is very quiet. Sea surface temperatures looking like that right now, and you can see there fairly warm and warming, of course, along Central America either side. 30 degrees along the coast of Mexico, pushing 30 degrees in the western part of the Gulf, and in the Caribbean very warm there as well. Where Danny is, around 26 to 27 degrees, although it passed over a little area of 28 earlier when over the Gulf Stream. The Indian Ocean, fairly warm. Western Pacific, though, you can see there 30 degrees and getting towards 31 by the looks of things. In the Philippine Sea, very warm. looking at how that compares with the anomalies, sea surface temperature anomalies there, you can see above average for the most part in the Western Pacific, and in the Atlantic as well, generally above average now as well. So after that remarkable start to another hectic tropical weather bulletin, let's introduce our team. Right now we have got with us obviously myself, and you'll be able to see me shortly, but we've got Christian, Xavier, Dakota, Kay, and Mike. Good evening to you all.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And you'll see them all very shortly as well. Let's press this button and see what we've got. A whole lot of nothing by the looks of things. And in a minute, magically, there is the rapid scan imagery of Danny, which has made landfall, has it, at this point?
Yep.
So when did that happen?
It happened an hour ago. This was near St. Philip's Island, South Carolina, at 23 days, so 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time.
Now it's looking pretty good, despite the fact that it's over land. Massive burst of convection there. It looks completely different to how it looked at sunrise this morning.
Yep.
Would you like to provide analysis or commentary on how that's managed to occur?
Oh, I think Kay would be better, but Kay is currently muted, so I will try my best. So, in terms of what happened this morning, we were pretty much looking at convection that was flaring up towards the late morning hours, and really it was just... I think the main reason it was struggling to develop earlier was because of the unfavorable upper level winds, but once it got into those warmer sea surface temperatures of the Gulf Stream, that allowed it to get more of the organization it needed for it to become a tropical cyclone. Although, unfortunately, today it's been kind of a confusion as to whether it's been a tropical depression or tropical storm. You can notice that. And, of course, we noted that during our video update that we released at 20 Tuesday, so 6 p.m. Eastern, we had it as a tropical depression, although it looks like we have now confirmed that it was a tropical storm during that time. And the analysts have deemed that it's now since weakened back to a depression.
Okay, that's interesting. National Hurricane Center, have they just done an update?
Yeah, I actually have all the stuff from the intermediate advisory.
Oh, let's just get onto this just a moment. We're looking at radar right now, but we'll get to Xavier's imagery shortly. You can see there near Beaufort on the western side some significant rainfall, possibly accumulations there, and moving into Georgia. So let's take a look now at Xavier, showing us the National Hurricane Center's cone.
All right, so basically this is the latest one. This is as of 8 p.m. Eastern or 0 UTC. They have since weakened the storm down to 40 miles an hour. They did have it at 45 earlier. The pressure has also risen up to 1,010 millibars. You can see here that it's moving west-northwest at 16 miles an hour. And there is, of course, tropical storm warnings from Edisto Beach northward into more parts of South Carolina. So nothing in Georgia because tropical storm force winds are really occurring to the northern part of the system. And they do expect a rapid weakening as we head into Tuesday, with it becoming a remnant low by Tuesday. And I think it's only by tomorrow afternoon that it's down to 50 miles an hour by the National Hurricane Center. So that's really quick weakening there. And it'll pretty much be fully dissipated within the next 36 hours from that. Here's the storm surge graphic from the National Hurricane Center. They are still highlighting the possibility for 1 to 3 foot storm surge all the way from Port Royal Sound to South Santee River in South Carolina. Elsewhere, there really isn't expected to be much of a surge except for maybe some rip currents, really. In terms of the tropical storm force wind probabilities, it's really just a small confined area of South Carolina that has those tropical storm force, and that's only a 10 to 20% chance of those tropical storm force winds, and then you have a 5 to 10 that extends all the way into parts of Georgia and further inland South Carolina.
That's also to be noted on that particular graphic that they don't update that one at the intermediate, so that's as of 2 p.m. Eastern time.
Yep.
That's actually no. The last they do it at the intermediates, but it takes a little while for it to come out. So I
Yeah,
think I'm right in saying that.
and
But
then
yeah,
And then, of course, you have the key messages that they also give with every advisory. They're saying that heavy rainfall is possible from coastal southern South Carolina into Georgia. I think that they have mentioned that it's pretty much 1 to 3 inch rainfall amounts, and that's pretty much for relatively minor in terms of what you normally see from tropical cyclones. So, if there's any good news, it's the fact that it's a tiny storm and that not much rainfall is expected with this. Tropical storm force winds are expected across portions of the South Carolina coast late this afternoon. Of course, that is currently ongoing, probably for parts of the South Carolina coast. And of course, that is expected to not last long because we will be seeing rapid weakening with this system. And as previously mentioned, Danny is going to be causing some low surge and life threatening surf and rip currents. So, those in the coastal areas, please make sure you are aware of the rip currents and the conditions of pretty much the sea. So that way, you're not making any dangerous decisions that could impact your life. So, that's really what we're looking at in terms of Danny here. I should also note about the notability of Danny's naming. As some of you may know, this is the third storm to form this so far in June. This is the fifth time ever that there has been 3 storms in the in the month of June, and of course, this is also ties the record because we have not had more than 3 named storms in the month of June.
that is remarkable to think about. Let's just take a look at the wide shot. I was hoping that we'd have a wide shot here. It looks good, honest, when we get it, but for some reason that's not loading up. I wanted to show the perspective with Enrique as well, but go over the products for Enrique as well, which is the other storm that's active in the Eastern Pacific there.
Yeah, I can do that. So this is as of the oh, whoops, that's the wrong thing. This is as of the newest advisory 15A that also just recently came out. They now have Enrique down to 65 miles an hour, and they have lifted all the warnings that were in effect for southwestern Mexico. The only warnings that now remain are the tropical storm watches that are now in effect for the Baja Peninsula. So we are no longer dealing with the hurricane. It's been struggling throughout the day, and it's really kind of collapsed in a way. But regardless, we're still looking at a weak tropical storm making landfall or passing near Baja between Wednesday morning or early afternoon hours, and they do have it weakening down to depression. And then a remnant low finally by Thursday, but you can see it's a really slow moving storm. It's only moving northwest at 6 miles an hour currently. So that is something to keep in mind. It's going to be rainfall that looks to be more the primary threat rather than the wind. In terms of wind speed probabilities with this one, it does not. They don't really have much of a giant chance of tropical storm force winds there. It looks like there's still tropical storm force winds possible, but that little tip of southwestern Mexico there. And then, of course, you still got a little sliver of 20 to 30% chance of tropical storm force winds across portions of the Baja Peninsula, the southern end. And then once you get into Cabo San Lucas and La Paz, you're going down into the 10 to 20% region. And then further inland, it's down to 5 to 10%. In terms of the chances of 50 knot, which is basically 58 or to 60 miles an hour, it does not look like that's going to be a case at all. So we're not looking at severe tropical storm force winds going on there. In terms of the key messages, at least what the National Hurricane Center is trying to highlight, they are saying that the outer rain bands of Enrique are still likely to produce heavy rains across portions of western Mexico during the next few days. Of course, that's going to cause life-threatening flash flooding and mudslides as a result. The core of Enrique is now moving away from the southwestern coast of Mexico, but tropical storm force winds could still occur over portions of southwestern Mexico within the warning areas, which no longer exist there, but still are possible in terms of the gusts. That is through tonight. And then, of course, same with Danny, recurrence and life-threatening surf are also a threat with this. And that's also going to be something that is a prolonged threat for days given the slow movement of this storm.
Well, I did want to show you some imagery of it, but for some reason, a lot of the imageries have just gone down for us here.
Uh,
You've got some there, yeah.
Yeah, so basically what we're dealing with is the fact that it has really become significantly exposed to the northern quadrants over the last few hours. You can see its center really poking out over here. It looks like it's kind of hiding back under convection now, but really from 16 to 20Z, you can really tell that's centered there. So it's really gotten messy in terms of its structure. It is definitely not the hurricane it used to be, and it's really been stagnating under that dry air. And really, that's been the issue with the entire life. Because of course we were looking at it what could have been a Category 2 or Category 3. Then you had those dry air intrusions that stopped that rapid intensification, and then of course you had those second efforts that were trying to develop an eye so it could try to get in again. And of course all those efforts failed as well. And then that final attempt is really what started its severe downfall. So thankfully, we didn't look at what could have been a Category 2 or Category 3, so definitely fortunate for those in Mexico, especially considering the fact it went more toward the north than we would have hoped.
It
And of
did.
course, still had Baja in the crosshairs, so thankfully we're not looking as strong, but regardless, those there in Baja and those in southwestern Mexico still feeling the impacts from the rain should still be monitoring the situation closely.
Indeed, I always get nervous when I'm away from the studio for a few days, as I have been in the last couple of weeks. That's why you've not been hearing so much from me here. But here we are once again. So those two tropical storms active right now. And of course, the main story is that Danny has made landfall in South Carolina, the southern part, in the last just over an hour ago, if I'm not mistaken, and will now be moving inland. What can we expect with in terms of impacts then? Winds aren't going to be particularly destructive, but are we looking at high rainfall accumulations, and is the area vulnerable right now?
So what we're looking at is so of course we have our cyclone destruction potential scale. Of course, that was designed by our very own Devin, and as of right now, this is a CDPS stage 1, and very deep into stage 1, which means that it's hardly 1 to begin with. We're not really looking at much. Of course, you can see that the storm itself is small. I mean, you can only see the impacts feeling from Georgia into South Carolina, really, and then it's just cirrus clouds that extend outwards from that. Rainfall isn't much of a big threat either. I mean, you've got a very exposed system to begin with. So 1 to 3 inches seems to be the main rainfall. Of course, you could see some isolated areas that could see maybe 4 or 5 inches of rain, but that's really not much of a big deal either. And of course, the winds, this system is going to be rapidly dying as it continues to push further inland. So of course, winds are not going to be a significant threat. So really, the threat with this system is relatively low compared to most of the storms. But someone did point out earlier that this is actually the first storm to make landfall in South Carolina in the month of June since 1867.
That's a long time. 1867. And again, it's just on the very top left of your image there, Tropical Storm Danny. And we just panned back to this imagery just to allow any discussion about the other potential systems in the Atlantic right now. So we're looking down there towards the central Atlantic at that disturbance, which is slowly proceeding towards the Caribbean, and way off the coast of Africa there to the south, barely on the screen, another area that could end up developing. Let's see if we can talk to some of our other people on our panel right now. Christian, you're there in Hampshire. How are you doing today, and what's your thoughts on what we've been seeing?
I'm doing good. My thoughts on, well, to be honest, I honestly didn't think this would be named so soon. Because again, when I last did the bulletin, this storm was at a 10% chance of forming. Then obviously, it rapidly organized, and here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's essentially my thoughts on the system as of now.
So very unexpected. It reminds me, to be honest, I don't really want to do it, but Bertha of last year, a little bit, in how, I mean, okay, it's not, it didn't get named like 15 minutes before landfall like it did with Bertha or whatever it was, less than an hour at any rate. But it does remind me a little bit of that, and the people it gives people excuses to draw those parallels to 2020 again.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that can, uh, yeah, how that can, what's the word? How that can draw parallels, but honestly, things are a little bit different this time around. Like you mentioned, Bertha was named pretty much 15 minutes before
But that
landfall.
was at the end of May as well, so, you know,
That was also at the end of May. We're now at the end of June.
small differences, but they don't mean, you know, that this. To be honest, the conversation's slightly moot in that it doesn't really mean very much in the grand scheme of things for this upcoming season. But I do think that we'll be looking at models a little bit later on, and what we've got upcoming could be a point of interest when we're looking at the Caribbean, because models are getting pretty strong signals now on that second disturbance developing.
Right.
And model consensus as well, so that's something to look for. Latest infrared imagery from Xavier there on the NOAA floaters, and you can quite clearly see how that convection has blown up just as it was making landfall. You saw it initially, and that's when I first started looking at it closely. That's when I first started the automated stream that has been running parallel to this, and those who are watching on the live link, youtube.com/force13/live, when we're finished here at the end of the hour, it will throw you back to the automated stream. But those latest frames showing big cloud tops, a massive push there. Could that possibly have increased the wind speed momentarily?
I'm not really especially known of that, but of course we all know that convection is really one of the primary things you need for an organized cyclone. And given the fact that it was able to get that convective push, may very well, because of course we did have recon into the system, and this that massive blow of convection is where they did find those 45-mile-an-hour winds that they used to upgrade the system to Tropical Storm Danny earlier. So I mean, very well might have probably was that.
Well, let's get down to the bottom of this then. So we have the recon readings that happened earlier, and I just want to get your I don't. Who made the decision in the end, Xavier?
Well, originally it was hold on, I'm trying to get back here. So we originally went with Kenneth, that basically said that it was a TD at 15Z, in agreement with the National Hurricane Center that also gave it. At
Right.
18Z, we still had it as a TD. That was Mike who made that call, and then of course we still had it as a TD at 21Z. Now, this has since changed. We still have it as a TD at 18Z. However, Mike did make an override. That was the final call, that because of the accurate support from SFMR of 34 to 36 knots, as well as the radar data from 49 knots, and using the multiplier, which would support 42 knots, as well as the 30 knots observation, which likely undersampled the system. Basically, a whole bunch of stuff in terms of satellite estimates.
Yeah, those
In
numbers
case for
just
the,
flew
yeah,
right by
of
me.
course, I'm pretty sure people who don't understand that. So in terms of a whole bunch of satellite estimates, when you put it together, that is what you take into consideration. That's what allowed this to be a 40-mile-an-hour system by our analysis at 5 p.m. Eastern time, and that's what we would have gone on the video update if we had known earlier. But of course, this is the aspect of our analyst team. We are able to make changes or override things as we get more data, so always helps.
So we've got here at HQ, we've got satellite imagery playing up right now. So we're going to try and show a different one. This is the infrared, and just bear with me on that as we center it. There it goes. So that's the progression of this storm throughout today. That's how it looked this morning on those first frames. It was just really a naked swirl, really, with convection very far to the west, and then much more towards the centre later on. And definitely a tropical storm at landfall, in my opinion. Do we have Kay on the line now as well? Because I don't know whether everyone is with us immediately or not.
Nope, it looks like K is muted.
Go ahead if we have you, Kay.
Hello.
Welcome aboard. Your thoughts on Danny, first of all, and I think you've been busy researching and crunching more numbers in the background elsewhere.
That is correct. That is what I've been doing. Um, Danny is a unusually small tropical cyclone which has demonstrated rapid fluctuations in intensity. It could have been a tropical cyclone for a lot longer than the NHC has it, depending on how you butter your bread, so to speak, with regards to a tropical cyclone definition. Some people say it's been a tropical depression
That's a,
since yesterday.
that's a nice,
That's a bit
gentle way
extreme
to
in my
put it,
opinion.
buttering bread and all that. Yes.
Yes. But definitely a tropical depression at this point. Um,
See, I'm
recon,
I'm not sure about that because it's easy to go off looks, but it looks pretty damn good.
well, recon went into it, and there was at the same time as a convective burst, and that convective burst caused pressure falls and a very short-lived tightening of the pressure gradient, which led to tropical storm force winds appearing, literally because of this singular convective burst. And then as the burst faded, the winds faded, and a buoy in the maximum winds reported nothing above 30 knots shortly before landfall.
That's interesting. And the way it would, just looking at the radar now, the red hues are really going away on the radar imagery. The presentation's deteriorating, I would say, possibly substantially. Would that back up that claim?
It would, yes. But equally, we expect it to be weakening over land, and to be perfectly honest, those winds were only possible over the ocean, where the friction with the surface is lower. As soon as those winds moved over the land, it became a depression, whether or not they were gale force beforehand or not.
Okay. And what else have you been looking at in the last hour?
I have been looking at 95L.
And for our viewers, which one is that?
That is the one in the main development region, the one the NHC has marked.
The central one, the one in the central Atlantic there.
Yes, the one nearer to Barbados.
Okay. And the prognosis is?
Well, we've been looking at it um, throughout today, and for a while we've been perplexed by the microwave passes which showed convective bands wrapping around the center, which is something you normally only see in a tropical cyclone. But ASCAT showed nothing close to a closed center, so we passed it off as an anomaly. However, recently we looked at visible satellite imagery, high resolution from the past day, and discovered that there's a very, very small circulation that emerged from deep convection in the early afternoon, tracked on its own for 4 hours, and then refired deep convection over itself shortly before sunset.
Right. Xavier, could we get visible imagery there we're looking at?
Let's see here. I had infrared. Pretty much.
I can actually screen share a loop right now.
Oh, if you want to do that, you can do that.
Oh, okay.
Just let me bring it up.
So, whilst we're waiting for that, let's see if we can throw it back to the Atlantic map and see if we can get some questions. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. I know a lot came in before we've even asked because, people know by now that that's what we usually do. But I will try to get through some of those. Is it concerning that the Atlantic is currently on pace with 2020 name-wise? Do you expect this to continue or slow down?
Well, I mean, we got to look at the years that have also had June storm. At least, sorry, I'll get back to you about that later.
Oh, that was abrupt.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Well, we are currently tied with 4 other years for having 3 named storms in June. Go to Wikipedia and just jog my memory for what they are.
Do we think 95L will form in the 5-day period?
Yes.
You see, I'm not so sure if it doesn't do something in the next 24, maybe 36 hours. I don't think it will. I think it will be the one behind it.
I don't know. The one this is the one the NHC have marked, right?
Yeah. Last I saw, they had 40%. Is that still the case?
I'm seeing 2040.
So 40% in 5 days.
5 days, 20 and 2.
So, you know, we'll see. Did Danny come off from a frontal system? That's a question from Xori there.
No, it developed from an upper level low.
That its track would suggest that much indeed. Let's see what else we have. Are hurricane seasons getting a lot more active, or are we just naming more storms? That's an intriguing question, because I think it's a bit of both in the last 20 years.
Well, by number of named storms, we're catching more of them, and so more are being named. But in terms of activity, which is better measured by ACE, ACE is also going up substantially.
Let's take a look at your imagery then, now that we've got it.
Okay.
There's some static. That's because the sun went down, but there it is earlier in the day.
And you can see there is circulation that then goes under deep convection.
Ooh,
I would say that there is rotation. I am not sure about a circulation there.
You can see that there's broader rotation around it in the loop.
I did catch it better that second time through that imagery, yes. I still don't think it's substantial
You can see
enough.
this particularly is rotating around it.
For that period, but whether it's sustained or not, I'm not sure. We'd have to do
The
some...
problem with such a tiny system far from land.
Well, yes.
You can actually see that there is westerly inflow to the south of it.
We might have to do some proper forensic looking at that imagery and comparing with the infrared to see if we could establish whether it might have continued in the darker hours.
Right here, you can
Yeah, I'm
see
seeing it.
westerly wind.
No, I see all of it, Kay. I just don't
Yeah.
think it's substantial enough on that imagery alone.
But regardless of whether or not it is a tropical cyclone or whether this is sustained or whatever, if it keeps on trying to do this and develops as such a small system, it will intensify faster. Now, granted, it could also fall apart faster, but given it fell apart and then put itself back together several times over the last few days, it seems like it's going to keep trying. And if it keeps trying until it gets to the Caribbean, where conditions are better, it could certainly follow the more aggressive model guidance, shall we say.
I believe we're also joined by Noah now as well.
Hello.
Nice to have you on board once again. Any thoughts that you'd like to bring forward about any of the active systems?
Yeah, I think Danny has been a pretty big surprise today. I didn't think it would officially make it, but now we have a fourth named storm, pretty active season so far, and 95L. I don't think it was a tropical depression by the time we had the visible imagery, because we didn't have westerlies on the southern side or just very weak easterlies. But on the very last frame, you can see that they are really weak and they turn more to southerlies. And I think currently with the more impressive convection firing up, we could make a point of calling it a tropical depression.
So interesting discussion continues on that system, then who knows what we'll be seeing at first light tomorrow. More questions. A lot did come in when we did the call earlier. What do we think about disturbance behind 95L? I think it's got significant chances, but does the team actually agree with me?
Well, I think we had a pretty good ensemble signal a few days ago on that.
And that ensemble signal has actually stayed.
Which thing were you talking about, Nathan? The thing behind 95L?
Yes, near Africa. I saw this morning at least that pretty much every model was on board with something out of that.
The GFS wants a named storm to make landfall in the southern Lesser Antilles.
Yes,
The
it does.
HWR wants a hurricane in the East Caribbean.
Oh my goodness.
All the ensembles want it to be a tropical storm.
Yep.
Inside of 5 days, that is.
So that doesn't bode very well. We're giving it 30% at the moment.
That's probably going to go up.
That is probably going to go up. National Hurricane Center, they haven't got it yet, have they? On that.
I don't know why they're ignoring the models. I mean, the GFS clearly has it becoming a tropical cyclone, and they haven't put even a 10% down.
And speaking of those models, if you want to get some model runs up shortly, we can get onto that in a moment as well.
Maybe they think it will form after 5 days or something like that.
Well, I'll stop screen sharing and go look for the models.
Yes, please. It would be great to visualize those. Let's take some more questions then right now. Well, Kay, I just wonder if you wanted to finish up any thoughts you had about Danny, its designation, what the Cyclone analysts on our team were what their thought processes were, and how you interpreted the recon data earlier today.
The thought processes were that the flight level winds were corrupted by something, because there was a lot of issues with the data. For example, at the same time, SFMRs rose to 60-something knots, and the plane was executing a very sharp turn, and imagery they had at the time suggested there wasn't any convection where the plane was. We now know afterwards, with the imagery having come in, that it was indeed convection. It's really a case of hindsight a few hours later allowing us to see things that weren't available at the time, and proving that a couple of things that were assumed to be accurate were not the case.
And it happens all the time in this field, doesn't it?
Yes.
Just trying to see if there's any more pertinent questions right now. Just everyone asking about 95L, but we've discussed it quite a bit. As far as well, we'll get onto models in just a moment to discuss that a little bit further. Has a tropical cyclone crossed the equator ever? Is a question there from Evan Lopez.
No.
Now,
Officially, yes, but not as a tropical cyclone.
What?
that's
What
I just
Cyclone did
asked
officially?
a question in- I just put an answer in chat anyway.
That doesn't make any sense. How could a tropical cyclone cross the equator?
There was a tropical cyclone very near to the equator in the Indian Ocean. And officially, it maintained enough of a circulation due to inertial momentum to be classified a tropical cyclone as it crossed the equator and went to 0.2 south. Now, I don't think a lot of people outside of the Indian Ocean would agree with that analysis, but that's what the official agency put for the best track.
Okay, that's very cursed.
Ooh, that's
It is, yes.
Yep, so there you have it. And a quick one from Mr. Animal there. What do you study to become a meteorologist? Kay, you're on that path right now, aren't you?
You study maths and physics, and then once you go high up enough, you can study meteorology at university.
Oh, and
all you need is maths and physics.
And another question there about the chances of flooding for the Atlanta Metro.
Definitely possible, but not a high chance. I believe there's been a little bit less than normal rain from what someone there was telling me. I might be getting my wires crossed.
No, you're not wrong. There's actually been abnormally dry conditions. Of course, you have the drought monitor you start off with. Um, I'll get the drought pulled up real quick. Give me a second.
Yep. So sounds
There you go.
like. What's this?
All right, so I got the drought monitor pulled up. This is from the latest outlook from June 24th. So it is updated on Tuesdays. Or no.
Sorry,
yeah, there's
Xavier.
update
Where are we going right now? I can't. I'm not sure where I'm being instructed to look at.
Oh, my live stream that. Oh, I didn't update. That's why. Give me a second.
Sorry about that.
You're fine.
I was
All
just.
right,
Oh
are we
yeah.
looking now?
Okay. So yeah, there's a drought monitor right now.
All right, so basically, in terms of southern Georgia and parts of South Carolina into parts of the Mid-Atlantic, you can see there is some abnormally dry to slightly more drought conditions. That has also been the case across parts of Georgia and South Carolina, where it hasn't gotten there yet, but it could have in terms of the last few days because there has not been that much in terms of rainfall there. So rainfall has definitely been needed across parts of the southeast and in terms of rainfall with Danny, that is also a potential thing that could get some of that rain. Now, in terms of flooding, there is actually a way you can see how much of a risk that is. I can get there now.
Yeah.
So
From
this is the
Weather Prediction Center.
So this is the weather prediction excessive rainfall outlook. This, of course, is the risk of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance within 25 miles of a point. And you can notice it's only a marginal risk, which represents to a 5 to 10% chance. So, as Kay said, it is possible, but it's really not likely. Most of that's going on in Texas and New Mexico right now. And then as you go into tomorrow, there literally is nothing. It's just gone at that point. So
Wow.
it's a very short-term risk, if anything.
Yep. So by tomorrow it will be off the face of the earth by the looks of things. You've also got models there?
Yeah, let me go switch to those real quick.
Let's go and digest the models. This might be rather interesting. So the 18Z runs, which came out about 2 hours ago.
Yeah, I'll go switch to the wind so you can get a better idea here. But pretty much, you can see Enrique to the left there, but pretty much passing along. Looks like they're more or less trying to develop the wave behind it, so they don't develop 95L, it seems, this run. But they do develop the one behind it, and it definitely is a low-latitude cruiser, really.
GFS has been consistent on that.
Yeah. They have it going down to 997 millibars, then it starts to weaken slightly as it passes more towards the Western Caribbean.
Does it survive over there? Oh, it does.
They have it re-strengthening again slightly before it goes, and actually makes a second peak at 997 millibars before it strikes into appears to be Nicaragua. Or no, that's Nicaragua. That was
Belize.
Belize, yeah, Belize. So say basically similar to where Nana hit last year.
A little bit.
And it survives the Yucatan.
Oh dear.
It makes an actual new peak. This would be the strongest peak of the models, and then goes straight into Mexico as a hurricane at 987 millibars.
Wow.
Although that is 10 days out. And
it is.
On the dangerous end of model.
Yeah.
But what I want to know, Xavier, more than anything, really, is because I was looking this morning and there was a lot of cross-model consistency. What are the other models saying for that system?
So, in terms of the Canadian model, they pretty much, let's see what they're going with that one. It seems they have like a slightly weak signature with 95 out there.
That could be a TD there. That's a TS, maybe.
Yeah, they don't really develop the wave behind it until it gets into the Caribbean. That's
Both
not until
still active, though.
Yeah. So, of course, they still have something to monitor, but they have it, of course, because as you get to the more far side of... Yeah, and that's more towards the far side of models, so of course really can't...
Claudette 2.0 is
another one.
Just why not?
NavGem is just coming out theirs. Icon, in terms of that, really, they of course have some signature with 95L, and not really much to say about anything else at the moment.
Oh no, that's backed off.
Now, I'm going to get towards the ensemble so you can get an idea of what those are calling for.
Oh, pretty good signature.
I can see Enrique there, of course, going off into
That's
Baja.
hard to miss.
And now you can see something going on here towards 7 degrees north, 43 degrees west. That is
So you
where
can see where 95L is.
yeah. Yeah, you can see those 3 ensemble runs going for 95L there, and then you can see this next wave, which has significantly more model support, as previously mentioned. And really, they have it being a potential threat for the southern Leeward Islands and
Gosh.
even into parts of Trinidad and Tobago. So that's really something to watch. And then even possibly into Jamaica and more parts of the Caribbean. So I think this is definitely going to be something that we need to keep our eyes upon.
And that's
And of
on
course,
day 7 there.
yeah. And I'm really surprised that the National Hurricane Center really hasn't given an AOI chance to this either. Given the fact that this actually has a lot more model support than 95L does, and that already has a 40% chance of National Hurricane Center.
I'm sure that's on the way.
And then, of course,
One thing I noticed is that the GFS, for example, showed a lot weaker trade winds in the southern Caribbean as the second system behind 95L passes. So those strong trade winds that accelerate in the Caribbean are usually the problem and are the reason why tropical waves or tropical storms open up there. So I think there is a pretty good chance that we have an abnormally favorable environment there.
It should also be noted that the Bermuda High is positioned much further south than what you would expect right now. When I take a look at the GFS, I mean, this thing is positioned to the south of Bermuda even once this system behind 95L starts forming. And
Yeah.
this ridge is just, it's very strong, very blocking, and even in towards the late runs, I mean, there's only a little bit of a change in the steering currents from west to northwest, so yeah, this thing would be pushed very, very far south. This ridge is very strong, positioned to the south and west of what I would typically expect.
And yeah, you can see this from the models here because this little cluster of the blue numbers, because you can indicate the low pressure centers from the ensembles with the red numbers, and you can see where the Bermuda High is located based on the clusters of the blue numbers here. You can see it definitely is south of Bermuda. It really just gets closer to the south, and that's really towards Florida latitude, and that's really south. That's what's going to be driving the system south. And then, of course, that's why there's so many ensemble runs that take it south of the Caribbean. That's more of a track you'd see for August, from what I've experienced.
But Devon, nice to have you on board tonight. Is that also the reason why Danny's just made landfall in the US instead of recurving?
Yeah, so this actually has a completely different positioning of the high. The high is actually to the north and east of Danny, which is forcing it pretty much west-northwest.
Yeah, as it has done.
What's expected to happen is over the next 24 hours, or 48 hours, I should say, the high is expected to, because right now the high is actually currently split by a mid-latitude low-pressure system currently centered near the western Azores. That's going to dissipate, and basically the high is going to reform itself well to the south of Bermuda, and definitely pretty far east, too. Like, this thing's going to be to the east of the Leeward Islands, at least by central pressure, and that high's not going to split up until about day 6 or 7 when it starts migrating further east towards the Azores, where it'll be positioned to the south of them, and that's pretty much where it'll sit for the rest of the storm behind 95L's existence if it's able to develop. So we basically have the ridge broken down a little bit right now. It's expected to reform to the south. And that's what would drive 95L and the wave behind it into the Caribbean and this is a very strong blocking ridge as well.
Hmm.
So there's like there's really no room for the storm to move north here.
Now, Devon, you're often outspoken about the weak storms. What's been your take on Danny?
It's been really difficult to get a grasp on Danny. We got recon that went through the system and basically just gave us a bunch of question marks. Like, depending on how you want to analyze the recon data, you could say that the storm was anywhere between 30 and 50 knots. And I really don't think that there's any exaggeration to that either. The recon went through the center of the storm first. The data that we got back was awful and very choppy, so we missed the entire first pass of the storm. But the VDM, the vortex data message, which basically is like a summary of a certain pass of the storm, came back, and the National Hurricane Center was like, okay, this is 1016 millibars, which isn't all that impressive. It's like, okay,
No.
1016 millibars, this is a TD, this is nothing. Less than 40 minutes later, all of the sensors come back on. They end up going through the storm, doing this big U-turn in the storm, and they get like 60 knot SFMRs. We get well into the 50s in terms of flight level winds. We get a minimum pressure of 1,008, and we're all like, well, where in the world did this stuff come from? And then we got the next pass of the storm, and it was nowhere near any of those numbers. Barely got confirmation of it even being a tropical storm, if you could even say that. We have said that the 19Z pass is confirmation that Danny is a tropical storm, so that will be getting up.
Yep.
But then after that, the 21Z pass, the storm was dead. That circulation was dead. It was gone. It just gone. Poof. Done. Like, I think we got 15 knot flight level winds and a central pressure of 1,011.
And
Done.
it is pretty much passing over a radar site right now, but on that radar looking pretty, well, dying even further, you could say, by the looks of things over there.
I did see that there were some radar estimates that got up to around 50 knots over land. I haven't really heard of any of those reports getting to the ground. I don't know if that's really changed in the past 45 minutes or so, but at least the last time that I checked, I haven't seen any reports of tropical storm force winds on the ground. So it seems like whatever tropical storm force winds this storm had more than likely stayed out at sea. There's definitely some tropical storm force gusts over land.
Blown
but I
some
don't think-
impressive convection as well over land.
Yeah, well, that's to be expected with these weak storms. They come to land, and there's a little bit of a frictional convergence that ends up happening that creates uplift, and then you get a thunderstorm convection. So that's not too terribly surprising, honestly.
Let's see if we can take some more questions. We've only got a few more minutes. What was someone gonna?
There
Go ahead.
There was something Noah wanted to bring up, and I do have said model brought up on my stream.
Okay.
All right.
Noah, we wanted something to explain about this? So
Yeah, that's the velocity potential anomaly. Basically, the orange and the red shows sinking air, abnormally sinking air, and the greens show abnormal rising air. And this is about the time the wave behind 95L passes through the Caribbean. And we can see that there's pretty strong sinking air over the Eastern Pacific, which is going to act as a suppressor on convection in the Eastern Pacific, which is pretty likely to keep at least upper level westerly shear pretty much intact. So this probably a sign that shear, at least from the upper levels from the westerly direction, will be quite low.
Okay.
on the wave.
Have we talked about the South Atlantic system?
What?
That would be a no.
That would be a no. All right. Well, this is
Um,
something that we're gonna begrudgingly have to like gloss
I have some
over
news
here.
on that, Devon.
Yes, Kay.
Everyone's favourite unofficial agency, MarineHer, has designated it a possible area of cyclone formation.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, they're absolutely correct on this one. I've taken a look at the GFS model runs, and yeah, yeah, this thing's definitely a potential form, at least from what I'm able to see from model runs. It
Oh
looks
my
like it
goodness.
will disconnect from all fronts in about 36 hours, and then from there we'll be pretty much seeing if it can maintain convection. If it does, it's a slam dunk to be a subtropical system. The storm is moving. The storm's pretty much located off the coast of Uruguay right now, and it's moving north and east, pretty much paralleling the South America coastline. And as it continues to move north and east, I'll be getting into warmer waters and more favorable waters for development. And it's supposed to lose its frontal connections, to say the least, that it currently has. And let me see if I can get it up on satellite really quickly. Satellite shows what I would consider to be a pretty powerful extratropical low currently off the coast of Uruguay. This was actually brought to my attention by Isaac, and I have to thank him a lot for that, because otherwise this probably would have gone unnoticed. We've got someone bringing up some unenhanced imagery. I'll go ahead and bring up my personal favorite type of imagery here, and that is shortwave. And this is brought to you, of course, by RAM Slider, which is just a beautiful way to be able to access all sorts of geostationary images across the globe. This is using the GOES satellite. And you can see here, if it'll animate properly, animations it's not exactly good at, but just getting the storms itself, you can see how it's doing. And you can see here that it's still connected via front. You can kind of see the frontal boundary here stretches into South America and then comes back in towards the center. So it's definitely still connected here, but it's starting to get into a maturing phase. It's already got central convection, and we're expecting about 36, 48 hours as it moves off to the north and east here. It'll be pretty much moving off in that direction there. This frontal connection here is going to get cut off right about there, and it's just going to move off slowly. This front is going to decay and die, so there's this thing here. That's going to end up dying. And then we'll just have to see how the central convection holds out from there. But as of right now, there's definitely a non-zero chance for development. As far as what the exact chances of development are, I haven't looked far enough into it yet. But I could say it's definitely a non-zero chance for development here with this little cyclone that's developed on the coast of Uruguay.
Well, that's fascinating. Fascinating thing to end on tonight's live tropical weather bulletin. The main headline is that Tropical Storm Danny has made landfall in the United States in southern South Carolina and is now just about to move into Georgia. Tropical Storm Enrique is weakening substantially off the western coast of Mexico, but could still pose a tropical storm threat to the Baja California Peninsula. Thanks very much to my team in the last hour. Quite a few people involved in the production of tonight's event. Now let's take a look at what happened on this day in the world of storms. Hopefully, if this button presses correctly, there we go. On this day, on June 29th, 1990, we had two Category 1 cyclones active on either side of the Pacific. Elida in the eastern Pacific and Percy making landfall in China. A significant Category 1 landfall there. as it was on its weakening trend from a rather impressive peak earlier on. So that's what was going on this day in 1990. So that leaves me to say the upcoming names on our lists around the world in the Atlantic, and some people are making jokes about this now, about the Central Pacific. The next name there, by the way, is Hone. In the Atlantic, the next name is Elsa now, followed by Fred. In the Eastern Pacific, we're now looking out for Felicia, followed by Guillermo. In the Western Pacific, the next name is Infa, followed by Simpaka. And in the North Indian Ocean, the next name is Gulab. In the Southwest Indian Ocean, the names will change over in about 2 days. So Kanga will not be the next name after that. In the Australian region, the next name's Paddy, and in the South Pacific, we're waiting for Cody. We'll have probably a normal tropical weather bulletin tomorrow night at the same time. Thanks for watching.